Do you think you could ever be tricked into wiring tens of thousands of dollars to a stranger's bank account, especially when you already knew that that account was fake? Most people would say I'd never fall for something so blatantly wrong, but don't be so sure. That's exactly what happened to a client of mine who happens to be a very intelligent, very well-educated individual who spent lots of years working in large corporations, and yet he still fell for this basic hack. In this video, I'll explain exactly what happened step by step so you and your loved ones can spot a scam like this. And make sure that you stay till the end, where I'll review exactly what went wrong at every stage and how that could have been prevented with the right security controls. My name is Cathy Myron, and I'm the CEO of eSilo, a data backup and cybersecurity company. Today, I want to tell you the story of Mike. Now, that's not his real name. We're changing names to protect the innocent. But Mike is a client, but also close family friend. And he was willing to share with me the most intimate details of this scam and attack. And I will tell you that he said that looking back on it now, he feels so stupid. He feels foolish because with clear eyes and the benefit of a little bit of extra time, when he looks at the story that he was fed by these hackers, he realizes that a lot of it just didn't really make sense. But in the moment, with all of the fear and distraction and urgency and pressure that they were placing on him, everything seemed plausible enough that he went along step by step with the different parts of the scam. So it all started last Thursday around 10:30 in the morning. He was reading some news articles online, and at the bottom of one of the articles, he saw an interesting looking ad. It actually had nothing to do with the news article. It was something about some celebrity, and it had a very interesting picture. So he clicked on it, didn't even think twice, because the site that he was on was pretty reputable. When he clicked on that ad, that malicious ad, it took him to another website that immediately displayed a warning on the screen purporting to be Microsoft Windows Defender, notifying him that his computer had been compromised and that he needed to call tech support immediately. And it had an 800 number on the screen. And what's interesting about this is that not only did he get this full screen pop-up that he couldn't make go away no matter how hard he tried, but the speakers on his computer were blaring this ear-piercing, shrill sound. Your computer has been infected. Contact tech support. And between the adrenaline of the message and what that meant, as coupled with the sound of the alarm in his ear, it was just too much for him to bear. And now Mike's not dumb. He knows that something's not right. So he first tries to close the window, then he tries to reboot the computer. But no matter what he tries, every time it starts up again, the alarm is blaring in his ears. He can't think, and he knows he needs to do something. So he finally, exasperated and frustrated, calls the 800 number. And the person who answers the phone is named John, and John works for Microsoft, and he's going to help Mike get back into his computer and wipe out all traces of this virus that he believes that he has. So John asks Mike to download a remote access software that allows John to take full control of the machine from a remote location. Now, typically this type of software is commonly used by IT professionals, but it's very uncommon that you would allow a stranger to have full access to your computer just based on a phone number that was on the internet. John connects to Mike's computer. He has a look around, and he is able to miraculously resolve the problem, get the alarm to stop, and supposedly clean up any traces of the virus. Now, after everything is resolved, John doesn't ask for payment, as you might expect with a lot of these types of scams, which is quite common. But instead, he asks Mike, let's take a look around and make sure that there isn't anything else suspicious. So he has Mike log into his email and log into his bank accounts to look around and see if everything looks okay. And then what he offers to do is call the Social Security Administration and the bank on Mike's behalf to put fraud alerts on those accounts and let them know to watch for any suspicious activity. So to support this, and Mike's thinking, oh, customer service is excellent. I appreciate that instead of having to go through the hassle of finding the phone number and waiting on hold, John's going to go ahead and do this for me and make my life easier. John asks Mike for his bank account numbers, credit card number, social security number, phone number, all kinds of information that Mike knew wasn't smart and good to give him. So in all of those cases, he said, look, I'm not comfortable doing that, but I will give you the last 4 digits of the number. And that seemed to satisfy John. John puts Mike on hold and then comes back a couple of minutes later claiming to have a customer service rep from Bank of America, which is Mike's primary bank, on the line. And so now he's in a 3-way call with Susan, who's supposedly from Bank of America, John, who's supposedly from Microsoft, and then you have poor Mike. And Susan's explaining that on her end, she can see 2 attempted charges or 2 charges on his account. She reads him the details. And of course, Mike says, nope, I don't recognize that. And these are charges for large amounts of money. And then Susan proceeds to tell Mike this elaborate story about how there has been a lot of fraud and scams for people like him. And the best way to prevent the money from leaving his account and ensure that those charges, which are already approved, don't actually remove the money from his account, is to transfer that money to a dummy account, one that they're going to create together, and that will just be a holding place with a fake name, no real social security number behind it. They'll temporarily transfer $30,000 of Mike's money into that account so that tonight when the charges get processed, they will fail. The money won't be there to be withdrawn. And then in the morning, they'll move that money back. And because Susan says she's from the bank, and Mike doesn't understand a lot of specifics for how the banking system works, this seems plausible enough to him. But the catch is, in order to transfer the money out of his current account into this dummy account, he would need to do it in person at the branch, because that also helps to verify that Mike is in fact initiating the transfer and to ensure that everything is on the up and up. So Mike thinks, no problem. If I go to the branch, then I definitely know that this is absolutely legit. And here's where things get a little bit fishy. So Mike is instructed to go to the bank by himself, not to go along with his wife or anybody else. And because there's a lot of fraud and they asked him, where do you live? Which bank branch do you typically go to? Susan says that on the back end, she can see that there had been some investigations into that particular branch and some suspicion that tellers at that branch were colluding with these cybercriminals to do these hacking scams. So to ensure that the teller actually transfers the money that as Mike wants and doesn't know that Mike's on to them, they give him a story to tell the teller. So the story he's supposed to tell the bank is how the $30,000 wire transfer is supposed to be for a down payment on a vacation home. And it's a home that he's buying with his kids, and he wants to do them a favor by helping them out with this initial down payment, and they're going to pick up the rest of it. And the purpose of this story is to alleviate any potential concerns by the teller as to why this person who has no prior history or very limited prior history of wire transfers would be sending such a large amount of money to a new wire recipient. Now, thankfully for Mike, when he arrived at the bank, there were 3 or 4 other customers in line ahead of him. And in the 20 minutes or so ensued while he was waiting for his turn at the teller, it gave him some time to think back and reflect on everything that the scammers had told him. And the more he thought about it, the more he started to feel a little bit uneasy with everything that was going down. And so in that moment, he made the decision to call us here at eSilo. And that's when I had the chance to speak with him and explain that this type of a scam is very, very common, and that he should absolutely not transfer any money to any individuals, but instead, when he got his chance with the teller, to ask them to put a proactive fraud alert on his accounts and to sit and review all of the recent transactions. So the moral of the story is that oftentimes, as individual acts are happening in a larger scheme or scam, each individual step feels plausible enough, right? To be put in contact with your tech support, to allow them to have remote access to the machine, to allow them to do you a favor by proactively contacting other authorities who they say they work with all the time when it comes to investigating the extent of some of these hacks or incidents. But at some point, and especially when there's the movement of money involved, even if it's not labeled a payment or it is not going directly to the scammers, or so you think, that's when you really want to stop and ask yourself, is this really true, or is it possible that I'm in a complicated scheme and people in this equation are not who they say that they are? So when Mike got home, there were a couple of things that we did immediately. The first was to get onto his computer and uninstall any software that was related to the remote access or anything else that was really obvious that the scammers had put on. We wanted to stop any remote session if there was still somebody connected to his machine. Secondly, we went through his backup history to identify the last most recent backup before the attack had happened. And in Mike's case, everything happened around 10:30 in the morning, and he had just completed a backup at 8:45 that same day. So we knew that that was the set of backups that we were going to restore to his computer. Now, while we started working on that, we had Mike do an inventory of all of his financial accounts, all of his email accounts, and other critical online passwords, and begin to change those right away. In every case where he didn't already have multi-factor authentication, we had him turn that on. We showed him how to use a password manager and how that was much more safe than storing his passwords in his browser, which is what he had been doing. And by turning on multi-factor authentication and setting it up on his mobile phone, he would know that anyone who attempted to log in using any of the saved passwords that they could have obtained from his browser, he would still be alerted via the text message on his phone or the Authenticator app that we had installed to know that somebody else couldn't get into those accounts without that additional multi-factor code. And then thirdly, after the restore of his machine was complete, we worked with him to install better anti-malware software. So he had a McAfee subscription, but it had expired. And when we asked him why he hadn't renewed it, it was because he thought that through his cable provider, he was already granted access to a different subscription. I think it was Norton, and he thought it was automatic, so that there wasn't anything he needed to do. And just because he was using his cable provider, he somehow magically had this protection. So what we explained is that on the cable side, or your internet provider side, really all they're able to do is manage the network itself. And so we've helped him implement a smart home firewall for his home network that is protection above and beyond what Comcast is able to provide in the router and equipment that they give him. But that even if Comcast had given him or had included in his subscription an account for antivirus, he still would need to install that on the machine and configure it properly. Nothing happens by auto magic in the technology world. So we got him a subscription to Bitdefender. We put it on his wife, on his computer, his wife's computer and devices, and others in the office. And from that console, he's able to run remote scans and be alerted proactively to anything new or suspicious that's been detected. So between the backups that enabled him to recover his computer to a known good state before the hack, the new password and account level controls that improve the security of all of the services that he relies on for banking and finances and communications, and then improving the security of his device as well as his home network, Mike's now in a position to be much more secure and much smarter when it comes to avoiding hacks and scams like this in the future. I hope that this story helps you and a friend avoid a similar situation. Nobody should have to go through the ordeal that Mike and his family went through that day. If you need help identifying where you might have gaps in your own security posture or implementing any of the controls that we've helped put in place for Mike, feel free to reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And if you find this and other videos of ours helpful, please like and subscribe to them and share the link with a friend. I'll see you on the next one.